Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and today we're going to talk about the Amonkhet pre-release. And this video is going to be geared a little more to newer players. I want to talk about what a pre-release is, what you can expect, what you should bring with you. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk briefly about the Vocations, just so you have some general familiarness about what they are. Having said that, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support the channel and keep us making these videos. The first one is support through Patreon, and we're actually really close to our next Patreon goal. If you get a chance, check that out. Also, you can support us through our Amazon affiliate storefront. If you make any purchases from any sellers on Amazon via the links that you see there, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. You can find Amonkhet products as well as many, many other MTG products on there that I've compiled all the links to. Having said that, let's get into the information for today, and we're going to talk about first, if you are going to a pre-release, what should you bring with you? Now, a lot of folks are watching this video, maybe you've never gone to a pre-release before, maybe you've gone once or twice, and you're kind of wondering, how can I make my life a little bit easier next time I go? Well, here's a list of things that could help you out at least a little bit. It's just some simple things you can carry in a backpack or a bag. The biggest thing, number one thing that you see on the screen here, right in the center, pen and paper. That is actually huge. So many game stores will have you fill out some kind of paperwork to enter the tournament, or maybe you need a DCI card if it's your first tournament. You might need to fill out paperwork for that. And many, many stores just don't have the extra pens available. So either you have to find a pen somewhere, or else they'll sell you a pen. That's never a good feeling if you have to buy a pen. So definitely make sure you have something to write with. In addition to that, I would encourage you to bring paper. Now, if you're not somebody trying to get into competitive Magic anytime soon, there is a spin down die that you'll find in your pre-release pack, and you can use that to keep track of your life total. However, if you have aspirations to play more competitive tournaments in the future, I think it's a good idea to get into the habit of keeping your life total on paper as well as your opponent's life total, because in the more competitive level tournaments, if there's any sort of discrepancy and a judge needs to figure out what's going on, they're going to go back and look at the documentation of the life totals. A lot of times they can figure out where the discrepancy happened that way. So it's definitely a good habit to get into. Not necessary for this event, but a good habit to think about getting into. Another thing that I think is almost critical are sleeves for your cards. Now, some people might not care about the condition of their cards. They just want to play in the pre-release, and that's totally cool. But I would recommend the sleeves regardless, just because if you've ever gone to a card store and played 4 or 5 rounds of Magic on a table, not even a dirty table necessarily, but just a table that's getting used, you're going to know that eventually your cards start to pick up some dirt. They start sticking together when you try to shuffle them. It gets really annoying and can be difficult to manage as you go through the day. So it's nice to have sleeves. Now, if you bring sleeves, though, make sure you bring extras. The package you see in the picture here is a 50 sleeve pack, and that way if you have a 40 card deck, it gives you 10 extra sleeves in case one breaks or something like that. That should be more than enough. So make sure that you have matching sleeves and you have some extras. You don't want to bring just 40 sleeves, one breaks, then you have to buy all new sleeves at the store or something like that. Again, that won't feel good. Thirdly, dice. Dice are just great to have on hand to keep track of different elements of the game, like +1/+1 or -1/-1 counters, things of that nature. So it's always good to have dice. Like I said, you will get the 20-sided spin down die in your pre-release pack, but a couple other even 6-sided die. They don't have to be anything fancy, just whatever you can get a hold of. They'll help you notate those counters and things on cards. And finally, deck box or binder. I think it's good to have, even though your pre-release kit is a cardboard kind of makeshift deck box, and we'll see it in just a second. It's a little bit fragile, and if you really are concerned about the quality of your cards, you probably want something a little more sturdy. So if you have a deck box from home, or a binder or something like that, or you just want to put cards in a binder or a deck box that you perhaps are interested in trading, or you're just trying to separate cards you want to keep from those you want to trade, it's good to have something like that on hand. All right, let's look at that pre-release kit real fast. This is what you're going to get when you enter the tournament. Inside, you're going to find 6 packs of Amonkhet. You're also going to find 1 premium foil promo card with the date stamp on it for the weekend, and that can be any rare or mythic rare from the set. So you're getting an additional card. Now, all 6 of those packs and that additional card are open game for your pool to create your sealed deck. Sealed decks have to be at least 40 cards. They cannot be 39 or less. They have to be at least 40. And I would highly recommend when you build your deck, sticking to 40 cards. Sometimes folks will try to go 41, 42, but if you stick to 40, you're guaranteed to playing your most powerful cards. And you have all the cards again from those 6 packs and that one promo card to choose from. A couple other things you'll find in your pre-release kit. You will get the spin down die, so that can help keep track of your life total. Also, you're going to find a card, which is kind of like an achievements card, different things you can do kind of outside the game that will allow you to win potentially a 4-sided die, which is kind of a new item that Wizards has recently created for this particular pre-release. You don't have to participate in that stuff. A lot of times, I know when I was new to Magic tournaments or even pre-releases, I couldn't concentrate on all of that other stuff. I just wanted to concentrate on trying to win a game. So I totally understand that. But if you do have extra time on your hands and you want to look over that card, you can certainly do that. They usually give you also another small insert just giving you the basics of building a sealed deck. It's not a whole lot of information there, but at least it kind of points you in the right direction. Now, as far as the deck goes, I already mentioned you probably want to do 40 cards in your deck. Typically for me, and it's not always concrete, but I try to shoot for 17 lands and 23 other spells. Now that can vary. If I feel like I have a lot of low curve spells in my deck, then I can sometimes get away with 16 lands, and that's actually better for certain decks. Other decks, I might want to go 18 lands. It's okay to go more or less, but 17 I think is a good starting point for most decks, and is probably where you'll land most of the time. Now, out of those 23 spells, you probably want to go really creature heavy most of the time in sealed unless you get some sort of really unique pool. But for the most part, I think a set like this, it's fair to say that you probably want to shoot for somewhere between 15 and 17 creatures, quite honestly. Go really creature heavy. Not to say it's bad if you go 13 or 14 creatures or anything like that. You might have some other good spells. And keep in mind, you may have some spells that actually create creature tokens. And in some ways, of course, those would count as creatures when you're making your creature count. The next thing I would think about is removal spells. Pinpoint removal or direct damage is going to be the way that these creatures are going to get a path cleared for them to get in and make their damage. That's got to be your next priority when you're building your deck. And then your last few spots, look for your powerful cards that could be maybe enchantments or some other combat tricks or something like that that you want to put in because you do think they're going to give you an edge or an advantage. But once you build your deck, don't forget about your pool or your sideboard. The cards you don't use can be sided in at any time for you to change up your deck. So you can do that in between games, for example. If you played the first game and lost really badly to a certain card, look and see what you have in your sideboard because you might have something you can bring in and switch something else out so that you have a better chance of beating that card in game 2 or game 3. Now, when it comes to how many rounds you play and all that, that does vary from store to store, and you probably want to check with your local game store ahead of time to find out what day and time their tournaments are and what format they're playing. There are some different variants that you can find at a pre-release. For example, a lot of times you have midnight pre-releases Friday night, but many stores will do a midnight pre-release, but also do perhaps a Saturday afternoon and sometimes a Sunday afternoon. Some stores will do a two-headed giant pre-release where you actually have to play with a partner. Now, those stores usually will run regular pre-releases too, but maybe like their Sunday afternoon one is a two-headed giant. So you do see that sometimes. Typically, a normal pre-release is about 4 rounds. And what a lot of stores will do is you'll get a prize payout based on your wins. So if you go 4-0, you'll get a certain amount of packs. If you go 3-0-1, you'll get a certain amount. If you go 3-1, you get a certain amount. That's typically where the prize payout ends. Most stores, if you go 2-1-1, you usually don't get anything for that. But you do get to play all 4 rounds, even if you're losing. So if you go 0-4, that's okay. You're still getting a chance to play and hopefully still having fun and playing with your new cards and getting to see the set and other cards that are in the set and maybe meeting some new folks and planning to go back and play again sometime. So it's definitely not a loss, even if you don't get any wins. Now, other stores will do some other things. I have been to pre-releases that just do basically a 5-round tournament, and then they pay out prizes to whoever would have come in like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or what have you, whatever the prize payout is. Other stores do some kind of out there stuff. Like I've seen stores that will throw in a prize of like a Modern Masters box or something like that. Of course, it costs more to get into those tournaments for prize support, but if you do happen to win, you could get some big prizes. Usually the competition's a lot higher, though, in those sort of things. They don't always feel like casual tournaments, and they can be very long, too, especially if they start at midnight. So be careful about that. So ask your store ahead of time just what they do, but I think most of them usually run the 4-round format for the most part. All right, let's talk about some of the mechanics you're going to find in the Amonkhet set. The first one is -1/-1 counters. So you can see on the screen here, there's an example of this When this enters the battlefield, you have to put 3 -1/-1 counters on a target creature you control. Now, that could be this creature, making it a 1/1 effectively. But whenever this attacks, you get to remove 1, and if you do, you gain a life. So you're going to find some cards, especially in green and black, that will play around with this concept of -1/-1 counters. Sometimes they're a drawback that you have to put on your own creature. Other times you'll have the opportunity to put -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures. Cycling. Cycling is actually an older mechanic that's returned a few times in the history of Magic. It's a very popular mechanic, and it can be a very powerful mechanic. The reason it's powerful is because it creates situations where you don't get stuck with cards that you can't use at that moment in your hand. You're able to discard them and then draw a card for a certain price. Every once in a while, there are a few cards that will also give you an extra benefit when you cycle. The card you see on the screen, for example, if I pay a green and 3, I get to discard it and draw a card, but I also get that additional ability that's stapled onto the card as well. So look out for those cards, but most cycling cards will just simply have you cycle them away and replace them with something else for a cost. A lot of times that cost is 2 mana, but it can vary. Now, it is important to note, especially if you're new to cycling, that you can cycle basically anytime you have priority. So you can treat it like an instant in that case. You don't have to cycle on your turn. So if it's your main phase, you might choose to cycle. Let's say you missed a land drop and you're hoping to hit a land. You can cycle something away on your main phase, hit a land, and then you can play that land. But if you're not worried about land, maybe you've already played a land for that turn, what you can do is pass the turn, let your opponent take their turn. If you have mana up, that could influence them to maybe not do something they wanted to do. They could be afraid you have counter magic or a combat trick or something like that. Then at the end of their turn, you can simply cycle the card away, draw the new card, and then start taking your turn with your untap, upkeep, draw card phases. Keep that in mind as you go through the day and you're playing with cycling cards. But cycling cards can be very good. Watch for those opportunities to play them when you can. Next we have Embalm. Now this is a mechanic that you'll find on creatures, and it's a mechanic that you can only use with creatures in the graveyard. But if the creature's in your graveyard, like the example you see here on Wavering Initiate, let's say I played this for a white and 2, 3/2 Vigilance, and my opponent hit it with some direct damage and died and went to the graveyard. Now, on my main phase, I can go ahead and pay a white and 4, and I can exile this card from the graveyard, and I'm going to get a token of a variant of this card. And the token's going to look like this. Now, regardless of whatever colors the original card is, the token's always going to be white. And secondly, the token will always add zombie as a creature type to the already existing creature types from the original card. Other than that, the card's relatively identical. As you can see here, it has the same name, has vigilance, it's a 3/2, but it is a token, which means it does have to follow the rules of tokens. For example, if it gets blinked, exiled temporarily, it can't come back like a normal card would. So do keep that in mind as you play it. Now, you're going to find these tokens in your packs of Amonkhet. If you're lucky enough to get a token of a card you're playing, you can certainly use it to represent the card when you use the Embalm mechanic. But if you don't get the particular token, you'll just have to find another way to represent it and make sure your opponent understands that. There also is a punch-out card that you'll get in some packs that have a Embalm, just the word Embalm that you can punch out and just put on the card or put on the battlefield to help denote that as well. Next we have Exert. Exert's a fun mechanic because it lets you choose when you're attacking if you'd like to exert a creature. And when you exert, you get to do a extra bonus ability. Now, the drawback is if you choose to do that, then the creature will not untap as normal during your next untap step. And it's kind of tired, it's exhausted, it was exerted, so it doesn't get to untap next time. Now, you can mitigate that drawback, though, if you have another way to untap the creature. It doesn't mean the creature can untap. It just means the next time you go to your untap phase, it's not going to untap. But if I find another card that will untap the creature, I basically just got to exert for free, and that's pretty awesome. The card you see on the screen, this is a simple version of exert here. 4/3 creature, if you choose to exert it, it will attack in as a 5/4, and it will also gain menace until the end of the turn. Brick counters. These are another type of counters you're going to find on a number of artifacts within the set. The way this works is you'll find artifacts that will have an ability. Like, for example, this one, pay 2 to tap, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of turn, you may play that card, and you also put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. Now, once you get 3 brick counters on Oracle's Vault, then you can start using the second ability, which is exile the top card of your library until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost, and then it will tell you activate this only if you have 3 or more brick counters on this card. So basically, the more you use the card, the better it gets. At some point, you hit a threshold that you're able to use that next ability, and the next ability, of course, being better than the first ability. And that's the idea behind these cards. It takes a little time to get them going, but if your opponent can't answer them, the card can eventually become very powerful. Alright, let's talk about some archetypes that you might find in the cards once you open your packs and start to build from your sealed pool. Now, of course, there's 10 different color combinations in Magic, and there's really 10 different directions you can go as far as just the generalities of your deck. Now, I do want to point out these archetypes play a much bigger role in a draft environment than they do in a sealed environment. But I do think it's still important to be aware of what they are, because even if you don't have a full-on 100% deck that is geared for that one archetype, it's nice to know what cards might combo and might work well together, even if it's just a handful of cards in your deck. Now, Wizards, many times, will go ahead and print a series of uncommon gold cards that they each share 2 colors, and they kind of give you some insight as to what Wizards is trying to do with those color combinations. They did that for this set. So let's quickly look at those cards and talk about the archetypes for each pair of colors. We'll start off with white and blue. White and blue is all about Embalm, it's about zombies, and a lot of token generation, sometimes perhaps going wide and attacking in with a lot of small creatures. Next we have white and black, and the name of the game here is Zombie Tribal. You have a lot of opportunities to create zombie tokens, and a lot of synergies between what white's trying to do with Embalm cards and stuff like that, and what black's trying to do with giving zombies extra power and toughness. Blue and black, these colors are going to be the Cycling Matters colors. You're going to find a lot of cards that get bonuses when you either cycle or discard a card. Now, it's important to point out, too, when you cycle, technically you are discarding a card, but on these cards, they worded it like this, cycle or discard, I think just to simply make it clearer. But whenever you do that, in the case of the card you see on the screen here, it will get +1/+1 till end of turn. So look for other cards that will get those bonuses whenever you cycle or discard. Blue and red. Typically, blue and red is a more spell-heavy pair of colors. You find a lot of counter magic in blue. You'll find destruction, like direct damage in red. And those can be instants and sorceries many times. Now, this card that you see on the screen, Enigma Drake, is going to reward you for having instants and sorceries in your graveyard. But I do want to point out that these colors are a little more aggressive than maybe they have been in past sets, at least recently. So you could actually still build a blue-red deck that is a fairly aggressive deck and doesn't even necessarily dabble too much into a lot of extra instants and sorceries. Black and red, this is the aggressive color pair. This pair just wants to get in there and rumble. You're going to find a lot of opportunities to put cheap creatures down that have haste, that can attack quickly, and a lot of times they do tricks like prevent creatures from blocking so they can get their damage across fast. Black and green. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is the color pair that wants to play around with those -1/-1 counters. Red and green. Traditionally, these are very stompy, beat down, big creatures coming at you colors, and really no different in this set. A lot of big creatures that don't have evasion, but then red comes in to find ways to give them trample or other ways to get around their damage. There's also some nice combat tricks in red, not to mention some small creatures to round out that curve. Red and white, this is the color combination of trying to go wide with a lot of small creatures, maybe some token generation, and then the red comes in with a punch to try to pump those creatures up so they get in there for some serious attack damage. And finally, green and blue. They're looking to ramp into larger things. There's so many big green spells, and blue is kind of like the enabler to kind of help you get there, and that's very evident in the card that you see here on the screen. Last thing I wanted to talk about today was Invocations. Now, if you're newer to Magic, you may have heard of Masterpieces, or maybe you've heard of the Battle for Zendikar Expeditions, or perhaps the Kaladesh Inventions. Well, Invocations are the premium, super rare cards that you're going to find in packs of Amonkhet. Now, they are very rare. You're only going to find one in about every 144 packs. These are foil cards, even though you can't really see that in the pictures we're going to look at, but they're premium foil cards, and many of them have some pretty high price tags attached to them because of their rarity. Now, when they make these cards, most of them are reprints. There's a few cards, in this case the Gods, that are cards that are actually from the Amonkhet set, and they just have a different variation of that particular card for Invocations. Now, as far as the reprints go, those cards are only legal in constructed Magic in the formats they're already legal in. For example, if I get Force of Will, that's a card that's legal in Legacy, Vintage, but is not legal in Standard, so I can't put it in my Standard deck. However, for Sealed and Draft, these cards are completely legal. So you can actually put that Force of Will in your pre-release deck if you want to, and it's just fine and very powerful. So, having said that, the main reason I wanted to show you these cards quickly is just so you're aware of how they play and that they are legal. And secondly, that there can be a nice price tag attached to a lot of these cards, again, due to their rarity. So I don't want anyone to open one, not know what they are, and maybe get a bad trade or something like that. So let's take a quick look. We'll start off with Austria Command. One thing I do want to point out, there's a little controversy around the look of these. A lot of players were not happy with the look when it was premiered. Some really liked it though. And I will say this, I'm kind of in the middle. The one thing I don't like about it is the fact that the card frame is very thick, making the art feel a lot smaller. And the art on these look incredible. I just wish the art was more pronounced. Other than that, I like that they tried something different, and I think they're going to look really cool in person, especially with the foiling effect and all that. So, anyway, let's go over the cards. We have Austria Command. This is a great commander card. Actually needs a real reprint. Hopefully we'll get one in a regular set at some point, or some supplemental product with a wide release. But this is a pretty popular commander card. Even Mind Sensor. This card was actually reprinted in Amonkhet, so you can get an Amonkhet version of this. It was originally from Future Sight, but it is a card that's had some sideboard play in Modern. Containment Priest. This is a card that was originally from a Commander product and hasn't actually seen a regular release in a normal set, and probably never will, quite honestly. But in the meantime, until it gets some sort of variant printing and maybe like a Eternal Master set or something like that. At this point, this is the only way to get a foil, so there will be a lot of players that maybe want to include this in their Legacy deck. If they are looking for a foil, this is going to be where they're going to go. Loyal Retainers. This card was originally printed in Portal 3 Kingdoms, which was a very rare set that they made many years ago, and it did get a foil reprint, of course, with its original art, not this art, in a product called Commander's Arsenal, which is another kind of expensive product from a number of years ago. So, again, I think a lot of players will appreciate the fact that this is being included for another, at least, chance for them to get their hands on it. Of course, this is the White God, so this is the Invocation variant. Worship. This is a card that hasn't been reprinted in many years, but it is popular in Legacy right now, and at times has been popular in Modern. Wrath of God. Classic board sweep. This is from the original Magic sets, Alpha Beta Unlimited. Brand new art. Actually looks really amazing. I love the art on the card. Consecrated Sphinx. This is a classic cube card, and it has seen a little modern play here and there, and still does. Just not in maybe the numbers it used to at this point, but it could always make a comeback for sure, and it's a really good card. If you're lucky enough to open this one in like a sealed pool, this can do some crazy work for you. Counterbalance. This was originally printed in Cold Snap as an uncommon, sees a lot of play in Legacy, and up until this point has not been printed anywhere else. Again, wonderful job with the art. It looks incredible. Next we have Counterspell, another classic spell from the beginning of Magic, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. Saw a lot of reprints in the early days of Magic, but Wizards has moved away from the 2-mana Counterspell for the most part. Cryptic Command, originally from Lorwyn, but this card is a fantastic control card in Modern. Daze, another classic card that sees play in Legacy and Vintage, and I bet the foiling on this looks incredible. Divert's always been kind of a classic spell that, again, was maybe forgotten about a little bit because it hasn't gotten any like true reprints or anything like that, but it's kind of nice to see it included here. Force of Will. Of course, I mentioned this earlier. Price tag wise, the most valuable card you can probably pull out of an Amonkhet pack at this point. And there's not a lot of opportunities for folks to find foil versions of Force of Will. When it was originally printed in Alliances as an uncommon, they didn't have foils back then. And they later made a promo foil, but again, that was kind of hard to get a hold of and became expensive. And a year ago, this card was reprinted in Eternal Masters with really beautiful art by Therese Nielsen. And you can get that foil version, but again, because of the art, it is another expensive version to pick up. So this may be actually the cheapest way to get a foil Force of Will for some time to come. Kefnet the Mindful. Of course, this is the Blue God variant. Pact of Negation, originally from Future Sight, but again, a really strong card in control decks. Spell Pierce. This was just reprinted in Modern Masters 2017, but again, here's another version of it. Stifle, one of my favorite cards from like Legacy and Vintage Magic, but this did see a reprint in the first Conspiracy. Attrition, this is an awesome Commander card. Really good inclusion here for Commander players. Bantu the Glorified, of course this is the God for Black. Dark Ritual, another card from the original Magic set, Alpha Beta Unlimited. Sometimes it's hard to find this in foil, but there was a version made a few years back in From the Vault 20. Diabolic Intent, this is a tutor. Tutors are always very popular cards. Entomb, this has been a reanimation staple for many, many years. Mind Twist, another one of the original cards from Alpha Beta Unlimited. Very powerful card, especially if you have some fast mana behind it. Really fun to put in power cubes. Aggravated Assault, another strong Commander card. And this is a card that, again, if you open this in sealed and you're in red, red really would love and appreciate this ability in this set. Chain Lightning, maybe not the original Lightning Bolt, but a classic spell originally printed in Legends. Hezeret the Fervent, and again, this is, of course, the red god. And then you get the green god, Ronos the Indomitable. Got a couple of gold cards here with Maelstrom Pulse, another really good modern card, by the way. And finally, Vindicate. This was reprinted in Eternal Masters about a year ago as well, but classic removal spell. It is sorcery speed, but it destroys target permanent, which could include lands for 3 mana. Now, you may have noticed that we didn't see a whole lot of red and green invocations. Now, they are extending this series into Hour of Devastation, so my thought is we're going to see more in those colors there. Alright, having said that, I hope you found this video helpful. Like I said, I just really wanted to hopefully point you in the right direction, get you started and ready for your pre-release with things like what to bring and what to expect from the set itself, and hopefully educate you a little bit on invocations if you are not familiar with them. Tomorrow, we are going to do a special episode of the MTG Market Watch, and we're going to talk about Amonkhet cards. Now, I don't usually like to talk about values of cards before the set comes out because they can be a little misleading. They're going to change quite a bit over the next few weeks. But I think it's important when people go to a pre-release, they know value-wise what cards are, at least at that given moment. So this is going to be a way to help you become familiar with some of the values of cards you could be opening this weekend. And then Saturday, we'll do our regular edition of the Market Watch. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.